How are you, Larry?
I'm doing great. I could have done it without a PowerPoint. I don't believe in death by PowerPoint, so no worries on that. Yeah,
Tell us
one
about
thing
this
that's
little house in Morcini, Michigan.
Morenci, Michigan. Yeah,
Morenci.
that's in Morenci, Michigan. And it's just a little house that we picked up the note a few years back and got it for what we thought was a great price and great return on it and so forth. This is the house I've never seen, never been in. It's just a nice little house across from school, and it's desirable neighborhood. And like I say,
So, Larry, you guys originally bought this in like sometime in mid to late 2018, and you bought it just as a performing note, and you were going to receive the monthly payments on it, and then something happened with your borrower, and they had some problems, they had some challenges, right?
Right. Well, and that's the thing. It's like we always think about what's our strategy, worst case scenario. If the note goes bad, what are we going to do? And in that way, we can sleep at night. We know that basically it's if the deal goes bad, we still got an out. And so basically, yeah, the borrower made a few payments and then they lost their job, and we did a little bit of a forbearance, and then they missed some more payments, and then they actually moved out of the house, and we talked to them and said, hey, what would you like to do? And we ended up doing a deed in lieu of foreclosure. So basically, it's wouldn't affect their credit because we wanted to work with them, and we didn't want to go through a foreclosure and that just takes more time, and so then we got the house back.
So, Larry, let's talk about that just a second. So they were like, "God, Larry, we can't make this. So I'll tell you what, we'll just give you the house back." So you didn't have to go through foreclosure, which was good for them. It was great for you. And as they were kind of leaving, they suggested a couple of people that may want to buy it, but they were ready to move, and so you guys ended up getting the house back. Wow, kind of right in the middle of the beginning of the pandemic, right, which was like May of last year.
Yeah. So yeah, and so basically, as with anything, as far as when you get a kind of unexpected surprise, you go, what do we do? And we roll up our sleeves and we get to work. And I advertised this on Facebook Marketplace as the first place I advertised. And I figured, okay, I can always advertise at other places if I need to, but I didn't get a realtor. We didn't get an agent of any sort. And we put a lockbox in the house, and I started advertising on Facebook and had a website set up for it that's so I could redirect people to that had a lot of pictures. And gosh, seriously, within about 3 days, we had 800 replies to the ad.
And Larry, let's talk about your ad here. And these folks have heard us. It's heard us over the past few weeks talking about a penalty box buyer. But basically, what you did here, right, is you used the ad that we always talk about. And we had Scott Bauer on last week. He uses the same type ad: private financing available to deserving buyers with a large down payment.
Right. And
you place that ad on Facebook Marketplace. Tell me what happened when you placed that ad.
Yeah. So when I place that ad, yeah, we get a lot of calls, and one of the first questions people ask if they're not completely qualified, they say, well, how much do they need to put down? And so we kind of qualify them and say, well, how much have you got? And before we really start talking terms, one thing, if you start talking details and terms too early, then it kind of puts you into a bind as far as what you actually could end up doing with the house and so on. So I think people sometimes get too involved as far as, oh, we got a buyer, and I need to really start talking what the details are in terms first before you really do some qualification there.
So, Larry, how many people did you have kind of inquire into this thing?
Yeah, anytime we put a house on Facebook, if we price it right, we get at least 50 people that we end up talking to.
Right. But you had 800 people look at it, didn't you?
Oh yeah, 800 people looked at the ad, and again, if you've got good information, like I say, I've got a little website that I can direct people to, and if they can go look at the pictures and say if this is the deal for them or not. And of course, the house did need some work, and so I didn't want to get somebody in there that that didn't know how to fix it or didn't have the capability to fix it. Especially if we're carrying the note.
Right.
And so I ended up talking to 50 people, not just talking to them, but chatting with them back and forth in emails and so on. And we ended up talking to about 3 or 4 people that were really serious and really could do what we needed to do as far as, a little work on the house and so forth. And yeah, it took us about less than a week to really get the house under contract and get a deal to go forward.
So you had 800 people up here, kind of in the top of the funnel, then you took it down to about 50 that you thought, well, and then you had it down to 3. And then once you got it down to that 3, you kind of went through, you talked to them about what it is. You had them go to an RMLO, a residential mortgage loan originator, because you wanted to make sure that the loan was Safe Act compliant, and you did everything right. And so you get it, and you find the buyer, and I think you told me you closed it from start to finish in less than 3 weeks.
Right. And with anything too, it's a matter of just talking to people and say, what experience do you have? Really find, well, for that matter, find their pain. A lot of times if we think about it, when we go to buy a house, the seller has a problem, but you also, if you're on the seller side and you're selling a house, the buyer has a problem. They're looking for something that they could either move into or something.
And tell us a little bit about, this is a feel-good story, guys. So tell us just a little bit about the buyers that you ended up getting this house, and kind of what that story was.
Well, to be clear, Morenci is a little town, and the woman ended up buying it, lived just a few blocks from the house, and she'd been kind of watching it and so on, and had been vacant for a while. Well, when we ended up talking to her, she wanted to buy the house for her disabled dad, and great little story is that her dad had been living in not very good conditions, and so she said, "Hey, I want to buy this house and rehab it for my dad," and so that's what she did. It's kind of a nice little story too. After we got the deal, basically the ink wasn't even dry yet, and she started painting the house, and she sent us a picture of the house that she painted it and so on. So it makes you feel good that they're ready to jump in there and get going on it. And then they put a ramp on the house as well too for her dad, and it just feels really good, and something like this, it's not always about getting a home run. This deal really was a base hit, and but
Larry, you guys do deals like this every week, every month, and it just makes total sense as you go through this. And you found a great buyer, and they've completely remodeled this house, right?
Yeah, and we're still staying in touch with them, and they're and of course now we're into several months as far as payments go, and they're paying well, and it feels good, don't have to worry about it.
Hey, Joe.
Yeah. Hey,
I want to make sure before we go down the trail too far here that we go back and just kind of chronically lay out what happened.
Yes, let's do that.
Larry bought a note where he was receiving monthly payments. He was just the bank. Right. He paid $20,000 for the note. The property was worth $38,000, but his investment in the note that was paying every month, he only paid $20,000 for the note. So you bought the note at a safe, what we would say, Larry, is an investment to value ratio. Your investment in the note compared to the value of the property was low. And you can show your slides and we can go through these, but I wanted to just chronicle and then something kind of crazy happened, right? The guy that was originally paying on the note defaulted, right? And he'd been paying for a long time, so it was sort of odd that he did it, but it happened, right? Because people always say, what happens if somebody doesn't pay, right? And let's go back to your screen and we'll show that, and we'll just kind of chronicle. So you bought this note for $20,000. Then you had to go through a forfeiture process to repossess the property, right, Larry?
Yes, sir. Yes.
And then am I correct in saying that the guy actually just deeded it to you?
Exactly. Yeah.
So the guy that was paying defaulted. Instead of you having to go through the whole foreclosure, you had what I would say is the right conversation with him, right? And that right conversation was, look, this isn't working for either one of us. It's going to be better. And so he said, okay, I'll just deed it back to you. Now all of a sudden you own the property again.
Uh-huh.
And when you own the property again, then you went out and put it on Facebook Marketplace, which that's the coolest story in the world. I mean, if you live in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, right?
Yeah.
You market a property in Michigan, and in 48 hours, you find the right guy that ends up buying it, pays you $6,000 down.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then you're receiving mailbox money again.
Yes, sir.
Now, because I taught you how to do this, do you share in that income with me?
Hey, Larry, just tell him the check's in the mail.
Check's in the mail. Yeah. And then, I mean, the beauty of being the bank is that, occasionally things go bad, but, if you box your note right, you do really have an out, and you have an exit strategy. And we could have done a number of things with this house, but we decided that this was probably the best way to go on this house. And it didn't need a whole lot of work. It needed some work, but doing the qualification as far as the person that was moving in there, I felt confident that they could do it.
And Larry, but you learned how to do it the right way, right? I mean, you learned that you buy a note that is paying. You bought the note at the right price. You learned how to buy a note, right? And then once you did that and you collected payments, and then you learned that sometimes borrowers, things happen. Bad things happen to good people every day. So they couldn't pay. You and your servicer were in communication with the borrowers, and they said, you know what, we've just got to kind of move on to start our lives over. So we'll just give you the house back. You go through the forfeiture process. You get the house back, and you guys immediately knew what to do with it, right? You immediately knew that, hey, we're in Coeur d'Alene. We bought the note and never went to Michigan, right? Small town in Michigan. You then ended up with owning the property again. Never went to small town Michigan, and then you find a great buyer and a great story here, and that's what it's all about. It's about learning the process and following that process.
Yes, yeah, and not to say that we always have the answer right away, but that's why we surround ourselves by smart people like you and Mr. Speed. It's sometimes we just need to get the right answer, and sometimes people give us a different look at as far as what can be done. And
well, let's talk about kind of what you ended up doing here. So you ended up selling it, right, to these folks these penalty box buyers in Michigan. And so they gave you $6,000 down, and then you had $5,436 in payments the first year. So the first year you bought in $11,000, and then you bring in another $5,436 for another 8 years. So at the end of the day, your 9-year income on that $20,000 investment was, almost $55,000. You still, I'll bet this payment was a lot more than the payment you did when you bought the note at $453 a month, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
One thing that I was thinking about in looking at this, because I know people ask, Larry, you're a pretty advanced student. You and Mariska both you're advanced students. You're award-winning students with NoteSchool. And so we have people that start in NoteSchool and they're worried to death. Well, I can't do all that Larry and Mariska know how to do, right? There's a number of strategies that somebody could have done, Larry, in this process had they not had the horsepower to do all that you did, right? Now, I say that you got the juice out of the lemon here, right? You had a $20,000 investment. You said instead of selling the house for cash to a local investor, and you certainly could have sold it for more than your investment, you said, I'm just going to go retail this thing and sell it back out and be the bank again. So you didn't have to make that decision, but you could make that decision. And I looked at it and I said, my gosh, he had $20,000 invested in the first year. After you resold it, you had already collected back $11,000.
Yep.
So for a $9,000 remaining investment, you have 8 years worth of $5,500 a year.
Yeah,
right.
I don't know what the yield is on that, Larry, but I can calculate that. Let me just say it's high.
It's very high, right? And Larry, you guys did receive some payments on this prior to you getting the property back as well. So, I mean, it is, again, it's just following the process. And that's what we're all about. Larry, you're muted. There you go.
If we wanted to, we could actually sell the note at this point or partial out. We've got to still have more options as well too. We're gonna probably hang on to it. We're gonna hang on to it because she's probably gonna end up paying it off early.
So Larry, let me say this. 40 years of doing this business and 20 years of teaching, it has been my heart's desire for somebody to get one thing really well. And that is that they're a deal architect. They don't just do things one way. They know how to look at a deal and figure out the moving parts of that deal and figuring out the puzzle pieces to configure it. And for a small deal, you made a lot of money because you were a deal architect.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Well, it's not something I learned overnight, or we learned overnight. We've been working at it for years, and it's fun too. It's when you can help people either stay in their homes or get into a home. It just makes you feel really good too.
Well, both ways. Sometimes you help people out of a house that can be another stressful factor, right? It's like, okay, now we've gotten rid of this. We can move on with our lives. We can move somewhere else and get started fresh. And that's a great feeling as well.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. So Larry, we'll hang on. If you can hang on a little bit, we'll have a little after party. We're going to let these guys finish up. You are awesome. And let me tell you something. I remember a long time ago that I spoke at your local RIA in the Seattle area. Mm-hmm. And you and Mariska, your wife, came and picked me up and took me to dinner. And I don't know how long ago that's been now, 7 or 8 years ago, but I still remember that. I still remember how hospitable you guys were. And it is just awesome to see all the cool things you've done. And your creativity is contagious. Let me just say that.
Well, thank you. I've got some funny stories I could tell about Eddie too, but this is probably not the appropriate time.
Yeah, we won't share all those on NoteSchool TV today. I'm just saying. We've had a fun time together.
Absolutely.
All right, we'll see you in the after party.
All right,
Joe,
thank you.